Thanks, Martin.
Let's go now to a pair of congressmen. Elijah Cummings is a Democrat from Maryland, and Scott Rigell is a Republican from Virginia. Congressman Cummings, you lost your own nephew to gun violence, and today you, alongside Congressman Rigell, with several other colleagues, have announced a bipartisan gun control piece of legislation. The bill would make it a federal crime to traffic in firearms and would impose tough penalties on so-called straw purchasers. But would this bill, sir, penalise only the purchaser? And wouldn't it make more sense to actually make the seller equally culpable if a straw purchase takes place?
Well, we've got several issues here, Martin. Part of the bill goes to increasing the penalties for straw purchasers, and this is when somebody goes to a gun dealer. And a lot of the times, if they go to a gun dealer, of course, the gun dealer will do a background check and get into that. So that's going to be taken care of. But there's another part of the bill that establishes a gun trafficking law, and basically it would address anybody down the line who might be a part of gun trafficking. In other words, if they buy a gun with the intention of passing it on to a felon or a cartel or what have you, they would be taken care of. So I think the bill is narrow. I think it's where we want it to be, and I think it's one that hopefully more Republicans and Democrats will join in and be a part of.
Well, it's certainly a positive step. Congressman Rigell, your home state of Virginia has cited by Mayor Michael Bloomberg of New York as the source of many of the guns that make their way up the I-95 and onto the streets of New York. According to the ATF, in 2011, over 1,700 guns from other states were recovered by law enforcement in Maryland alone. 418 of those were from Virginia. And Virginia ranks in the top 5 among states that export guns used in crimes. So how would this bill stop the flow of guns into your colleague, Congressman Cummings' state?
Well, Martin, this bill is a direct reflection of the wisdom and really the advice and counsel of our men and women in law enforcement and federal prosecutors. They're telling us right now that the federal law, as it is now, is insufficient. It's ambiguous. They ask us for help. That's why we're here today. And earlier we announced this legislation. It makes sense because it does target two groups of people, folks who shouldn't have guns. One is the group of folks who are straw purchasers, those who are buying guns for others, and also the gun traffickers. And look, as a lifetime member of the NRA, as a person who's a strong Second Amendment advocate, I've got a problem with people who use guns to commit crimes because it really puts pressure on the law-abiding citizens like myself and others. So that's why I'm happy to stand here with my friend and colleague Elijah and others, Democrats and Republicans, to get this legislation advanced.
Congressman Cummings, in Chicago, where gun stores are illegal, over a quarter of the firearms seized by police in the last 5 years were purchased just outside the city limits, 1,300 from one store alone. Assault weapons and high-capacity magazines are banned in Chicago. But still, that city saw more than 500 gun homicides last year alone. Now, assuming your bill passes, how is it possible to determine if someone is a straw purchaser? And how can a store be held liable for a straw purchase?
Well, let me give you an example, Martin. We have a situation where a number of guns that ended up in Oakland that came from Georgia, and they were bought by straw purchasers. A woman in Georgia bought guns for her boyfriend who had a criminal record. You know what he did then? He then sells them to folks in Oakland. The point is that this goes to that straw purchaser. It's going to cause them to say, wait a minute, cause a woman like that to say, maybe I shouldn't be doing this because I may be facing 20 years in jail. That's how a lot of guns get to places like Baltimore, get to places like Oakland. And so this is going to address that problem, and it's going to cause, and I'm convinced that the only people that should be against this bill is a criminal or the person who wants to be a straw purchaser.
One would think so.
I would think so.
Congressman Rigell, your party has traditionally sided with the NRA. In this interview, you've reflected on the fact that you've long been a supporter of the NRA. But given the comments of people like Wayne LaPierre, who opposes background checks, even though the vast majority of his members support them, is it your view, sir, that Republicans like yourself are maybe beginning to rethink their allegiance to the gun lobby?
Well, what we're doing here today, I think, reflects common sense, common ground, and what's right for America.
But does it, sir, reflect Republicans like yourself beginning to realize that some of the things that have been coming from the leadership of the NRA are simply nonsensical and non-representative of the vast majority of its own membership?
Look, I think the NRA through the years has done a lot of good things, and I'm proud of my membership in the NRA. Now, that said, I'm a businessman turned public servant, and I focus on that which I can get done. And we look for common ground, and that's why Elijah and I are working so well together. Representative Carolyn Maloney out of New York, Representative Pat Meehan out of Pennsylvania, one a Democrat, one a Republican. Look, we said, what's right for America? And we aren't focusing on trying to critique the NRA right now. We're not trying to focus on labeling. We're trying to advance sound legislation. And I think we got a shot at this, Martin. I think we can really get this done.
Congressman Elijah Cummings and Congressman Scott Rigell, thank you so much for being willing to work together on this critical issue. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Next, John Boehner and Eric Campbell.